most dangerous person in any society is not the criminal, not the corrupt politician, not even the tyrant. It is the genuinely good person who refuses to compromise their principles. And there is a philosopher who was destroyed for revealing this terrifying truth about human nature. Niccolò Machiavelli discovered why societies systematically eliminate their most virtuous members. And what you will learn today will shatter everything you believe about goodness, success, and survival in this world. You think being good is rewarded, but Machiavelli proved the opposite. He showed that excellence threatens mediocrity, that integrity exposes corruption, and that genuine virtue makes everyone else look bad by comparison. This is why good people are not celebrated, they are eliminated. Not through dramatic assassination, but through systematic character destruction, social isolation, and professional sabotage. Machiavelli himself was living proof of his own theory. He was an honest civil servant who refused to participate in the corruption of his time. He documented exactly how power really works, not how people pretend it works. He wrote the truth about human nature that everyone knows but no one dares to say out loud. And for this honesty he was tortured, exiled, and his name became synonymous with evil for 500 years. But here is what they do not want you to know. Machiavelli was not advocating for cruelty and manipulation. He was warning good people about the cruel reality they face. He was teaching them how to survive in a world that punishes virtue and rewards vice. He was trying to save the very people that history now believes he was trying to corrupt. Every great person who ever lived faced this same pattern. They were too good for their society, too honest for their time, too excellent for the mediocre masses around them. And society responded exactly as Machiavelli predicted it would. It destroyed them. Some were crucified, some were poisoned, some were burned at the stake, others were simply forgotten, and their contributions stolen by lesser people who knew how to play the game. You are about to discover the most uncomfortable truth about human civilization. The same truth that got Machiavelli branded as the devil's philosopher. The truth that good people are not just ignored, they are actively hunted down and eliminated by the very society they are trying to serve. And once you understand this mechanism, you will see it everywhere. In your workplace, in your community, in your relationships, even in your own family. If you do not understand what Machiavelli discovered about the fate of good people, you will spend your entire life wondering why your kindness is punished, why your honesty is used against you, and why people who lie and cheat seem to get ahead while you struggle. You will keep trusting people who will betray you, believing in systems that will crush you, and expecting fairness from a world that has never been fair to genuinely good people. Right now, in this very moment, there are good people all around the world making the same fatal mistake. They believe that being virtuous will protect them. They think that if they work hard, tell the truth, and treat others with respect, they will be rewarded. They are walking straight into the trap that has destroyed countless decent people throughout history. They have no idea what is coming for them. Every single day, honest employees are getting fired while corrupt managers get promoted. Whistleblowers are being destroyed while the criminals they expose are being protected. Scientists who publish inconvenient truths are having their careers ended, while those who tell comfortable lies receive funding and recognition. Artists who create meaningful work are ignored, while those who produce shallow entertainment become millionaires. This is not coincidence. This is not bad luck. This is the systematic operation of a principle that Machiavelli identified 500 years ago. Society does not just fail to reward goodness, it actively punishes it. And if you do not understand why this happens and how to protect yourself, you will become another casualty in the war against virtue. The cost of ignorance is devastating. You will sacrifice your principles for nothing. You will compromise your integrity and still be destroyed. You will try to fit in with people who will never accept you because your very existence reminds them of their own moral failures. You will spend years trying to prove your worth to people who are threatened by your goodness. But there is something even worse than being destroyed by society. It is becoming like the people who destroy you. It is allowing the cruelty of the world to turn you cruel. It is letting the dishonesty around you make you dishonest. It is permitting the mediocrity that surrounds you to make you mediocre. This is how society wins, not by killing good people, but by turning them into bad people. Machiavelli saw this transformation happening all around him. He watched good people become corrupt, not because they wanted to, but because they thought they had no choice. He watched honest people start lying because telling the truth was too dangerous. He watched principled people abandon their principles because holding on to them was too painful. This is why his warning is so urgent. If you do not learn to navigate the reality of how human societies actually work, you will either be destroyed by your goodness or corrupted by your survival. There is no middle ground. There is no safe space for naive virtue in a world that operates on power, deception, and self-interest. The people who succeed are not the best people. They are the people who understand the rules of the game. They know when to be good and when to be ruthless. They know how to protect themselves while still maintaining their core values. They know how to survive without becoming monsters. This is what Machiavelli was really teaching. This is the knowledge that can save you from the fate that awaits every genuinely good person who refuses to see the world as it really is. Niccolò Machiavelli was not born evil. He was born into a world that would teach him the most brutal lesson about human nature. In 1469, he entered a world where being good was the most dangerous thing you could be, and his own life became the perfect example of the principle he would later write about. Society destroyed him for telling the truth. Machiavelli started his career as an idealistic civil servant in the Florentine Republic. He believed in justice, in honest government, in serving the people. He was exactly the kind of person you would want running your country. He was intelligent, dedicated, and incorruptible. He refused bribes when everyone else was taking them. He told the truth when everyone else was lying. He worked for the good of Florence when everyone else was working for themselves. For 14 years he served his republic with absolute loyalty. He negotiated treaties, organized defenses, and tried to build a government based on merit instead of corruption. He was everything a public servant should be. And this is exactly why they destroyed him. When the Medici family returned to power in 1512, they did not execute Machiavelli for any crime he had committed. They destroyed him because he represented everything they were not. His honesty highlighted their corruption. His competence exposed their incompetence. His loyalty to the Republic threatened their tyranny. They could not allow such a person to exist because his very presence was an accusation against them. They tortured him first. They used a device called a strappado, where they tied his hands behind his back and lifted him by a rope, dislocating his shoulders. They wanted him to confess to crimes he had never committed. They wanted him to admit to conspiracies that existed only in their paranoid minds. But even under torture, Machiavelli refused to lie. Even when his body was broken, his integrity remained intact. When torture failed to break him, they used a more sophisticated form of destruction. They exiled him from the city he loved, banned him from all political activity, and made sure he could never again serve in government. They turned him into a ghost, a person without purpose, without income, without hope. They left him alive, but destroyed everything that made his life worth living. This is when Machiavelli made his most important discovery. Sitting in his small farmhouse, excluded from the world of politics, he began to understand exactly what had happened to him. He realized that his destruction was not personal, it was systematic. He had not been eliminated because of what he had done, but because of what he represented. He was too good for a corrupt system, and corrupt systems always eliminate people who are too good. He began to study history with new eyes. He looked at the rise and fall of leaders, the success and failure of governments, the triumph and tragedy of nations. And everywhere he looked, he saw the same pattern. The good people were destroyed, the corrupt people survived. The honest leaders were overthrown, the dishonest leaders prospered. The virtuous societies collapsed, the vicious societies endured. This was not what he wanted to discover. This was not what he hoped to find. Machiavelli would have preferred to live in a world where goodness was rewarded and evil was punished. But he was too intellectually honest to deny what the evidence showed him. He was too courageous to pretend that reality was different from what it actually was. So he wrote it all down. He documented the rules of power that everyone knew but no one acknowledged. He explained how societies really work, not how they claim to work. He revealed the mechanisms by which good people are eliminated and bad people rise to the top. He wrote The Prince, not as a guide for tyrants, but as a survival manual for good people who have to live in a world ruled by tyrants. But even this act of intellectual honesty was turned against him. His enemies claimed that he was advocating for the very behavior he was simply describing. They said he was promoting cruelty when he was only documenting it. They accused him of being evil when he was only being truthful about evil. They made his name synonymous with manipulation and deceit, when he was actually warning people about manipulation and deceit. This is the final irony of Machiavelli's story. Even in death, he continued to prove his own point. Society destroyed his reputation just as thoroughly as it had destroyed his life. They turned the man who warned about evil into the symbol of evil itself. They made the philosopher who tried to protect good people into the villain who supposedly corrupted them. For 500 years, people have been taught to fear Machiavelli's name. For 500 years, his warnings have been ignored because people think they come from a source of evil rather than a victim of evil. For 500 years, good people have continued to make the same mistakes he tried to warn them about because they refused to listen to the man who paid the ultimate price for understanding how the world really works. But now you know the truth. Machiavelli was not the devil. He was the canary in the coal mine. He was the person who saw the poison in the system and tried to warn everyone else. And society's reaction to his warning proved that everything he said was absolutely correct. History is filled with the corpses of good people who refused to believe what Machiavelli tried to teach them. Every generation produces individuals who are too honest, too principled, too excellent for their society to tolerate, and every generation society finds a way to destroy them. The pattern is so consistent, so predictable, that once you see it, you cannot unsee it anywhere. Let us start with the most obvious example. Jesus Christ was executed not because he was evil, but because he was too good. He challenged the corruption of religious authorities, spoke truth to power, and offered a better way of living. The response was entirely predictable. The religious establishment could not allow someone to exist who exposed their hypocrisy. The political authorities could not tolerate someone whose very presence made them look illegitimate, so they killed him. But this was not unique to ancient times. The same pattern continues throughout history with mechanical precision. Socrates was forced to drink poison because his questions made people uncomfortable with their ignorance. Joan of Arc was burned at the stake because her courage made the cowardice of her leaders obvious. Giordano Bruno was burned alive because his scientific honesty threatened religious dogma. Move forward to more recent times, and the pattern becomes even clearer. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated not by his political opponents, but by people who could not tolerate his moral authority. John Kennedy was killed when he began to challenge the military-industrial complex that profits from war. Martin Luther King was murdered when his message of love became too powerful for those who profit from hate. But you do not need to look at famous historical figures to see this principle in action. It operates at every level of society, in every institution, in every group of people. Corporate whistleblowers who expose fraud are fired and blacklisted, while the criminals they expose are protected and promoted. Scientists who publish research that threatens profitable industries have their funding cut and their careers destroyed. Teachers who refuse to lower their standards are pushed out of schools that prefer mediocrity to excellence. Consider the case of Karen Silkwood, a nuclear plant worker who discovered safety violations that put workers and communities at risk. She tried to expose the truth about radioactive contamination and corporate cover-ups. The response was swift and brutal. She was harassed, her home was contaminated with plutonium, and she died in a suspicious car accident on her way to meet with a journalist. The company she was trying to expose continued operating for decades. Or look at Gary Webb, the journalist who exposed the connection between the CIA and drug trafficking in American cities. His reporting was accurate, his sources were reliable, his evidence was overwhelming, but instead of being celebrated for revealing government corruption, he was destroyed by the very media establishment that should have supported him. His career was ended, his reputation was ruined, and he eventually took his own life. The corruption he exposed continued unchanged. This is not conspiracy theory, this is documented history. Good people who threaten corrupt systems are systematically eliminated, not always through murder, but through character assassination, professional destruction, social isolation, and psychological warfare. The methods have become more sophisticated, but the principle remains exactly the same as it was in Machiavelli's time. The business world provides countless examples of this pattern. Employees who refuse to participate in unethical practices are labeled as not being team players. Managers who treat their workers fairly are criticized for being too soft. Leaders who prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term profits are removed by boards of directors who care only about quarterly earnings. Look at what happened to Sharon Watkins at Enron. She tried to warn company leadership about the accounting fraud that would eventually destroy the company. Instead of being thanked for her honesty, she was marginalized and her concerns were ignored. The executives she was trying to help went ahead with their fraudulent schemes until the entire company collapsed, destroying the retirement savings of thousands of employees. Or consider the fate of Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning, who exposed war crimes committed by the American military. The response was not to address the crimes that were exposed, but to destroy the person who exposed them. Manning was imprisoned, tortured, and held in solitary confinement for years. Meanwhile, the people who committed the actual war crimes faced no consequences whatsoever. Academia provides its own examples of this principle in action. Researchers who publish findings that contradict established dogma face professional suicide. Their funding is cut, their papers are rejected, their positions are eliminated. Meanwhile, researchers who produce results that support the preferred narrative receive grants, tenure, and recognition. Take the case of Peter Duesberg, a brilliant virologist who questioned aspects of HIV research. Regardless of whether his specific theories were correct or incorrect, the response to his questions reveals everything about how institutions treat dissent. Instead of engaging with his arguments scientifically, the medical establishment destroyed his career. His funding was eliminated, his papers were rejected, and he was excluded from conferences. This is how science protects itself from inconvenient questions. The pattern extends to every profession, every institution, every area of human activity. Police officers who report misconduct by their colleagues are forced out of their departments. Soldiers who refuse to participate in war crimes are court-martialed. Politicians who refuse to accept bribes find themselves without campaign funding and without support from their own parties. Even in families and personal relationships, the pattern holds true. The family member who refuses to participate in dysfunction becomes the scapegoat. The friend who tells uncomfortable truths is excluded from the group. The spouse who maintains high moral standards is accused of being judgmental and self-righteous. What Machiavelli understood, and what all these examples prove, is that human societies have an immune system that attacks goodness as if it were a disease. Excellence threatens mediocrity. Honesty exposes lies. Courage highlights cowardice. Integrity reveals corruption. And when people are confronted with their own moral failures, they do not respond by improving themselves, they respond by destroying the person who makes them look bad. This is not a flaw in human nature, this is how human nature actually works. This is not an exception to the rule, this is the rule. This is not something that happens occasionally. This is something that happens systematically, predictably, and inevitably whenever genuinely good people come into contact with corrupt systems. The evidence is overwhelming. The pattern is undeniable. The conclusion is inescapable. If you are too good, they will destroy you. This is not pessimism. This is realism. This is not cynicism. This is truth. And until you accept this truth, you will continue to be surprised every time goodness is punished and evil is rewarded. Now we come to the heart of what Machiavelli discovered. The destruction of good people is not random. It is not personal. It is not even conscious most of the time. It is a psychological mechanism that operates automatically in human groups, as predictable as gravity and as ruthless as natural selection. Once you understand how this mechanism works, you will see it operating everywhere around you. The mechanism begins with a simple psychological fact. Most people are not genuinely good, but they need to believe that they are good. They need to maintain a positive image of themselves in their own minds. They cannot face the reality of their own moral mediocrity, their own ethical compromises, their own cowardly choices. So they create elaborate mental stories to justify their behavior and protect their self-image. This psychological need for self-justification works perfectly until they encounter someone who is genuinely good. Suddenly, their mental stories stop working. Suddenly, they are forced to confront the gap between what they claim to value and how they actually behave. Suddenly, they see themselves clearly, and they do not like what they see. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. The mind cannot handle the contradiction between the self-image and the reality. Something has to give. Either they must change their behavior to match their values, or they must eliminate the source of the uncomfortable comparison. Changing behavior requires effort, sacrifice, and admitting error. Eliminating the source of comparison requires only destruction. The choice is always the same. They choose destruction. But here is the crucial point that Machiavelli understood. This destruction does not feel like evil to the people doing it. It feels like justice. It feels like self-defense. It feels like protecting society from a dangerous element. The psychological mechanism that destroys good people also provides perfect moral justification for the destruction. Watch how this works in practice. When a genuinely honest person joins a corrupt organization, the corrupt people do not say to themselves, "We are corrupt and this person is honest, so we must destroy them." Instead, they convince themselves that the honest person is naive, unrealistic, self-righteous, disruptive, not a team player, dangerous to morale, bad for business. They create a narrative where the good person becomes the villain and the corrupt people become the heroes protecting everyone else from this troublemaker. They genuinely believe their own story. They feel righteous about destroying someone whose only crime was being better than they are. This is why the destruction of good people is so thorough and so vicious. It is not just elimination, it is moral crusade. The destroyers believe they are doing the right thing. They believe they are protecting society. They believe they are serving the greater good by removing someone who threatens the established order. Machiavelli observed this mechanism operating at every level of society. In families, the most functional member becomes the identified patient, the one who supposedly has all the problems. In organizations, the most ethical employees are labeled as troublemakers who do not understand how business really works. In governments, the most honest politicians are accused of being extremists who threaten stability and compromise. The mechanism has several predictable stages. First comes isolation. The good person is gradually excluded from important meetings, social events, and decision-making processes. They are made to feel like an outsider, like someone who does not belong, like someone who does not understand the culture. Next comes character assassination. Stories are spread about the good person's motives, competence, and mental stability. They are portrayed as someone who is self-serving, incompetent, or psychologically unstable. The stories do not need to be true. They just need to provide justification for what everyone already wants to do. Then comes active sabotage. The good person's work is undermined. Their resources are cut. Their support systems are dismantled. They are set up to fail, and when they struggle under impossible conditions, this is used as evidence that they were never competent in the first place. Finally comes elimination. The good person is fired, expelled, ostracized, or destroyed. And everyone feels good about it because they have convinced themselves that this person was a problem that needed to be solved. But the most insidious part of this mechanism is how it corrupts the good person themselves. Facing constant attack, constant criticism, constant undermining, many good people begin to doubt themselves. They begin to wonder if maybe they really are too idealistic, too rigid, too difficult to work with. Some of them compromise their principles trying to fit in. Some of them become cynical and bitter. Some of them give up entirely and leave the field to the corrupt people. This is the final victory of the mechanism. It does not just eliminate good people, it prevents them from being replaced by other good people. Machiavelli saw this pattern destroying the best people of his generation. He watched honest officials become corrupt, trying to survive. He watched principled leaders abandon their principles, trying to stay in power. He watched good people become bad people because the system made goodness unsustainable. This is why his advice seems so cold and calculating. He was not trying to make good people evil. He was trying to teach them how to survive long enough to do some good in the world. He was trying to show them how to navigate a system designed to destroy them without being destroyed by it. The mechanism operates through social pressure, economic pressure, psychological pressure, and sometimes physical pressure, but it always operates. It is as constant as the law of physics. Put a genuinely good person into a corrupt system, and the system will either corrupt them or eliminate them. There are no exceptions. This is what most good people do not understand. They think that if they just keep doing the right thing, eventually they will be rewarded. They think that if they just stay true to their principles, eventually others will respect them. They think that if they just prove their worth through their actions, eventually they will be accepted. They are wrong. The system is not designed to reward goodness. The system is designed to eliminate goodness. The mechanism is not broken. The mechanism is working exactly as it is supposed to work. Understanding this mechanism is the first step toward learning how to defeat it. Here is the truth that Machiavelli discovered and that cost him everything. The world is not divided between good people and evil people. The world is divided between people who understand how power really works and people who do not. And people who do not understand how power works will always be destroyed by people who do, regardless of who is more virtuous. This is not what Machiavelli wanted to be true. This is what Machiavelli discovered was true, and once you accept this reality, everything else becomes clear. The question is not whether you should be good or evil. The question is whether you should be naive or wise. The question is whether you should be a victim or a survivor. Machiavelli was not teaching people to be cruel. He was teaching them to recognize cruelty. He was not telling them to abandon their principles. He was telling them how to protect their principles in a world that attacks principles. He was not corrupting good people. He was trying to save them from being corrupted or destroyed by others. The uncomfortable truth is that goodness without power is useless. Virtue without strategy is suicide. Principles without pragmatism accomplish nothing. If you want to do good in the world, you must first survive in the world. And survival requires understanding the rules that actually govern human behavior. This means accepting that most people are motivated by self-interest, not by noble ideals. It means recognizing that most institutions are designed to serve those in power, not to serve justice. It means understanding that most social rules exist to control people, not to protect them. It means acknowledging that most moral rhetoric is used to manipulate people, not to guide them toward virtue. Does this mean you should become selfish, corrupt, and manipulative? Absolutely not. It means you should understand that you live in a world where other people are selfish, corrupt, and manipulative. It means you should prepare for this reality instead of pretending it does not exist. Machiavelli taught that there are two kinds of combat. There is the combat of laws and the combat of force. Ideally, human conflicts would be resolved through laws, through reason, through moral persuasion. But when laws fail, when reason is ignored, when moral persuasion is useless, you must be prepared for the combat of force. Not because you prefer force, but because your enemies will use force against you, whether you are prepared or not. This applies to every area of life. In business, you can try to succeed through superior products and honest dealing, but if your competitors use lies, manipulation, and dirty tricks, you must be prepared to defend yourself using the same tools, not because you want to lie and manipulate, but because you cannot allow liars and manipulators to destroy you. In politics, you can try to serve the public good through honest leadership and principled positions. But if your opponents use propaganda, personal attacks, and corruption, you must be prepared to fight back on their terms. Not because you enjoy dirty politics, but because clean politics is impossible when only one side plays clean. In personal relationships, you can try to build connections based on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. But when you encounter people who exploit trust, punish honesty, and abuse respect, you must be prepared to protect yourself, not because you want to become like them, but because you cannot allow them to destroy you. This is the balance that Machiavelli was trying to teach. Be as good as you can be, but be as tough as you need to be. Maintain your principles, but do not let your principles make you vulnerable to people who have no principles. Help others when you can, but do not sacrifice yourself for people who would never sacrifice anything for you. The uncomfortable truth is that this balance is necessary because human nature has not changed since Machiavelli's time. People are still motivated by the same drives, the same fears, the same desires. They still respond to the same incentives and the same threats. They still form the same alliances and the same enemies. They still use the same strategies to gain power and the same methods to destroy opponents. Technology has changed. Social structures have evolved. Political systems have been reformed. But human psychology remains constant. The person who understands human psychology will always have an advantage over the person who does not, regardless of which one is more moral. Machiavelli understood that most people prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. They want to believe that the world is fair, that good people are rewarded, that evil people are punished, that everything happens for a reason. These beliefs make them feel better, but they also make them vulnerable to people who understand that the world does not actually work this way. The truth is that the world is not fair. Good people are often punished while evil people are often rewarded. Things happen for reasons, but the reasons are usually related to power, not to justice. Understanding this truth is painful, but it is also liberating. Once you stop expecting fairness from an unfair world, you can focus on creating your own advantages instead of waiting for advantages to be given to you. This does not mean becoming cynical. It means becoming realistic. This does not mean giving up on goodness. It means learning how to be good effectively. This does not mean embracing evil. It means recognizing evil and preparing to defend against it. Machiavelli's final lesson is that you can choose to be naive and be destroyed, or you can choose to be wise and have a chance to do some good in the world before you die. You can choose to be pure and powerless, or you can choose to be strategic and influential. You can choose to be a victim of the system, or you can choose to understand the system well enough to survive it and maybe even change it. The choice is yours. But the choice is also urgent. Every day you spend pretending the world is different from what it actually is another day you waste being vulnerable to people who understand exactly how the world really works. Every day you spend being naive is another day you give your enemies advantages you do not have to give them. Machiavelli paid the ultimate price for teaching this truth. He was destroyed for trying to save people like you from being destroyed. The question is whether you will learn from his sacrifice, or whether you will make the same mistakes that have been destroying good people for thousands of years. You now possess the knowledge that cost Machiavelli everything. You understand the mechanism that destroys good people, and the truth about how power really operates in human societies. But knowledge without action is worthless. The question is what you will do with this understanding. Will you use it to protect yourself and do good in the world, or will you ignore it and become another casualty of your own naivety? The first step is to stop being surprised when goodness is punished and corruption is rewarded. Stop expecting fairness from systems that were never designed to be fair. Stop trusting people who have never proven themselves trustworthy. Stop giving your enemies weapons they can use against you. Start seeing the world as it actually is, not as you wish it were. This means developing what Machiavelli called strategic thinking. Before you take any action, ask yourself who benefits and who loses. Before you trust anyone, ask yourself what incentives they have to betray you. Before you reveal your plans, ask yourself how that information could be used against you. Before you make yourself vulnerable, ask yourself whether the other person would make themselves equally vulnerable for you. Apply this thinking to your career. Do not assume that hard work alone will be rewarded. Understand the political dynamics of your workplace. Know who has real power and who only has titles. Build relationships with people who can protect you and advance your interests. Document your achievements so others cannot steal credit for your work. Always have a backup plan in case you are betrayed or eliminated. Apply this thinking to your relationships. Do not give your trust freely to people who have not earned it. Pay attention to actions, not words. Notice how people treat others when they think no one is watching. Maintain your independence so you are not completely dependent on people who might abandon you. Reciprocate kindness, but do not be the only one making sacrifices. Apply this thinking to your finances. Do not depend entirely on one source of income. Build multiple streams of revenue so you cannot be easily controlled through economic pressure. Save money so you have options when others try to force you into bad decisions. Invest in your own skills so you always have value to offer in the marketplace. Apply this thinking to your information. Do not share everything you know with everyone you meet. Keep your most important plans private until you are ready to execute them. Learn as much as you can about other people while revealing as little as possible about yourself. Information is power, and power should be protected. But remember, the goal is not to become like the people who destroy good people. The goal is to survive long enough to do good in the world. The goal is to be strategic without becoming cynical. The goal is to be wise without becoming evil. The goal is to protect yourself without hurting innocent people. This requires maintaining what Machiavelli called moral flexibility. Be as good as the situation allows, but be as tough as the situation requires. Help people when you can do so safely, but do not sacrifice yourself for people who would not sacrifice anything for you. Be honest when honesty serves a good purpose, but do not use honesty as a weapon against yourself. Most importantly, use your understanding of power to change the systems that destroy good people. Once you understand how these mechanisms work, you can work to disable them. Once you gain positions of influence, you can protect other good people from being eliminated. Once you build power, you can use that power to create more space for virtue in the world. This is what Machiavelli really wanted. He did not want good people to become bad people. He wanted good people to become powerful people. He wanted virtue to be combined with effectiveness. He wanted principle to be married to strategy. He wanted the best people to understand the rules of the game. The time for naive goodness is over. The time for strategic virtue has begun. You now have the tools to protect yourself from the fate that has destroyed countless good people throughout history. You now have the knowledge to be good without being weak, to be principled without being stupid, to be virtuous without being vulnerable. But this knowledge comes with responsibility. You must use it wisely. You must use it to protect other good people, not just yourself. You must use it to create a better world, not just to succeed in the current world. You must remember that the ultimate goal is not just survival, but making survival worthwhile. Machiavelli's sacrifice will only have meaning if people like you learn from his experience and refuse to repeat his mistakes. His persecution will only serve a purpose if it prevents other good people from being persecuted. His truth will only matter if it helps create a world where truth is less dangerous to tell. You have been warned. You have been educated. You have been prepared. Now it is time to act. Use this knowledge to protect yourself, to advance your principles, and to change the world for the better. Do not let Machiavelli's sacrifice be in vain. Do not let his truth be forgotten again. Do not let good people continue to be destroyed by their own ignorance of how power really works. The choice is yours. But now you cannot claim you did not know. Now you cannot say you were not warned. Now you cannot pretend that the world is different from what it actually is. You have the truth. What you do with it will determine whether you become another casualty of naive virtue, or whether you become someone who helps good people survive and thrive in a world that has always been hostile to goodness. Remember Machiavelli. Learn from Machiavelli. But do not repeat Machiavelli's fate. Be better than your enemies, but be smarter than your enemies. Be more virtuous than the corrupt, but be more strategic than the corrupt. Be the person who proves that goodness and power can exist in the same individual. Be the person who shows that virtue and effectiveness are not opposites, but partners. Be the person who uses wisdom to protect innocence, instead of letting innocence be destroyed by its own naivety.